This is from Thomas F. Hines. Title is, Where Did the Information in Cells Come From? School books and the media often imply that chemicals got together to form life with no intelligent intervention from a creator needed. Is that true? The DNA, or even the most simple cell, has at least as much information as a 1,000-page encyclopedia. Where did the information packed into each tiny cell come from? Do chance, matter, or energy compose information, or does it always proceed from an intelligent source? The nature of information here. What is information anyway? The principal definition is knowledge communicated or received. By information, I mean a message that conveys meaning, such as a book of instructions. Information is not matter, though it is imprinted on matter. Instructions in the fertilization control embryonic development from the beginning and direct it to a specific outcome. Professor Werner Get, who works in the field of information sciences, writes, "There is no known natural law through which matter can give rise to information. Neither is there any physical process or a material phenomenon known that can do this." This statement, if true, destroys the whole basis of the idea that no intelligent designer was involved in the formation of life. Is it true? In our everyday experience, it takes intelligence to produce not only information, but also to create the alphabets, language, and codes which carry information. Every language or code we have ever come across, and information spoken or written in it originated in a mind. It did not spontaneously arrive from chemicals. Realizing this, some people, to avoid believing in an intelligent creator, claim that no real information is associated with DNA. No evidence backs up their claim, and a Nobel Prize-winning scientist destroys the argument with this. In all modern organisms, DNA contains, in encrypted form, the instructions for the manufacture of proteins. More specifically, encoded within DNA is the exact order in which amino acids selected at each step from 20 distinct varieties should be strung together to form all the organism's proteins. Can matter compose information? Can matter compose information? Many evolutionists claim that life arose from an organic broth. But how could organic broth know the precise order of each of the amino acids of even one protein, let alone the hundreds or thousands of proteins that a, quote, primitive cell would have to survive? The term organic broth, I have to say with a British accent, organic broth, refers to a random mixture of whatever chemicals happened to be there. Many today claim that RNA came first rather than DNA or protein and the RNA then produced the first cell. They claim that organic broth, or perhaps clay, somehow burped out a whole strand of RNA or of a simpler pre-RNA. They think that the broth or clay passed on to the RNA either the ability to evolve information or all the encoded information necessary for making a cell. It might have about the same chance of happening as an accident dumping a truck full of old-fashioned lead printing type onto the street so that the letters fell out in exactly the order of the letters in an encyclopedia, or else they fell there all mixed up, but with the ability to become sorted out by natural selection. Ideas like this are not science. People who trust in them have faith, but a faith based only on dogma and contrary to the evidence. I read books in the 12 years of directing a publishing house. Could I have simply dipped paper in ink or organic broth and saved the trouble of writing, rewriting, correcting, and rewriting? The quantity of information in even a very minimal cell is at least comparable to that of an encyclopedia. Where did the information come from? When authors proposed that RNA or DNA evolved from chemicals, they often implied that the material that contained the information would have determined what instructions the RNA contained. That if they can think of a way in which RNA might have been produced in nature, they would have explained the information it carried. If clay or organic broth did contain information, how would it have known to pass on the ability to make many different proteins instead of several copies of one protein? And out of the millions of possible proteins, why would clay have chosen just the ones which were needed to produce a living cell? Clay that could produce RNA, which was able to self-replicate and to catalyze the production of proteins, would seem to have been more intelligent than all of today's origin of life scientists put together. They can't produce an RNA, let alone one with these special capabilities. The RNA and the DNA RNA codes are determined by the arrangement of 4 nucleotides in different orders, like a 4-letter alphabet. If that doesn't sound like enough letters, remember that any message can be written with computers or in Morse code, and they only have 2-letter alphabets. To arrange letters or code into intelligent sets of instructions requires an intelligence. Those same 4 nucleotide bases that form the letters of the DNA code can be arranged to spell out the instructions for making all the different proteins. Where did the information they carry come from? Believing that the material called DNA or an imaginary pre-RNA world, pre-RNA would accidentally come with the correct instructions already on it is a bit like believing the following fanciful explanation of how an encyclopedia could be made in nature. Quote, a storm on the Nile ground up some of the papyrus reed that the ancients used to make paper. The waves deposited a bit of it on the flat rock where it dried. Now peel it off the rock. Look, it's made a sheet of paper. The first encyclopedia must have been made when a number of these sheets came together. Atheists purposely sidestep the really difficult question, which is not where paper or RNA came from, but where the information came from. Tell me about it. Someone may counter, quote, natural selection directed self-replicating pre-RNA in the accumulation of information. If natural selection could work on a non-living chemical RNA, it could only select for better RNA, not for the completely different sets of instructions needed to make DNA and proteins. Information is independent from the material that carries it. Okay, we know from experience, however, that the paper, computer, or whatever a message is written on does not determine the message. The idea that RNA would automatically have contained information necessary for life rather than gibberish is anti-science, not science. Information comes from a mind. My old Encyclopedia Britannica was on a CD. Now I consult a copy in the internet. Now I consult a copy on the internet. That material does not determine the message. The same sheet of paper can be used to draw a comic strip or write a chemical formula. The same stretch of DNA that carries the commands for brown hair can just as easily hold a command that will make blonde or teeth, for that matter. DNA is information. DNA's information is real meaningful information. RNA makes copies of portions of it, but the same information has been transcribed onto computers in the Human Genome Project and printed out on paper. Information copied onto computers from DNA carries the same information as the DNA from which it was copied. I've got to stop here. I'll make another copy. I'm running out of time here. Bye.